Quilts are the springboard for a series by artist Richard Haynes in a new exhibition at the Currier Museum of Art. He uses them to tell a fictional story of slaves who used quilt patterns to convey messages on the Underground Railroad. He first stitched the idea together when creating illustrations for the book Whispering Quilts. Alan Chong, director of the Currier Museum of Art, thank you so much for joining us.
It's nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Tell me about the story of Whispering Quilts. Is there a narrative here?
It takes a family leaving enslavement on a plantation in the South through the difficult journey, the wagons, the horse rides, the safe houses they need to move through as they make their way up to the North. So Richard takes us on this narrative step by step with the dangers, the joys, the emotions involved along the way. It's a powerful series of images.
And tell me about how he uses imagery. And I understand there's a bit of a debate, actually, about imagery that's used in the quilts and whether that was actually used for the Underground Railroad or if this is something that's assumed, I guess.
Well, the quilts are modern works of art. I mean, Richard Haynes is a contemporary artist. He uses bold colors and patterns that derive from many sources, including the tradition of American quilting. The figures are based on the story of the Underground Railroad. It's not an illustration of a precise history, and that's very important to know. And art never really is. Art is a creative embroidery. It captures the essence, the passions of a particular historical moment. So there's been a lot of controversy about the use of quilts in the Underground Railroad. There was a story or a legend that they provided directions and signals and identified safe houses and means of passage. I think it's safe to say that there's very, very little evidence for any of this, and a lot of this was made up. It took on the status of a myth or a legend. But the essential truth is that a lot of people helped slaves make their way to freedom in the North.
This is a moment in which we're really looking at what artists can tell us about our times. How was it that you decided that Richard Haynes was the artist to really respond to this moment?
It was organic. I mean, he was part of our museum family already, and we knew that he had created work that was relevant to this particular time. Not precisely, not literally, but it represented a lot of these essential truths. So we asked him if we could exhibit his latest series. That was the way that came about. Yeah.
All right, we are going to speak to him in just a moment. Alan Chong, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Richard Haynes, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, just to begin, tell me about the impetus for Whispering Quilts.
I decided that, I want to do a series very much like what Jacob Lawrence did on the Great Migration series. I decided I'm going to do an Underground Railroad series.
Does it unfold in like a novel might for a writer as you spend this time researching? How does it formulate in your mind?
So as I'm reading, you think about a novel, it is. Most people call me a storyteller. And so I was reading the slave accounts, and I read this story about this woman being bullwhipped because of her disobedience. And that is really the middle of this story. It's where this story is founded. So if you saw the exhibition, this woman is merged into flying geese. She is tied by her wrist and then lynched in a tree, pulled up to a tree. All of her clothes are stripped off, and she is bullwhipped 45 times, left to die. And this family, she gets married, and she was married at the time when the slave keepers pulled her out of her room and stripped her naked because she was a very defiant woman. And this family decided, I would rather run away and die in running away than to die on this plantation as an enslaved person.
And then where does the juxtaposition with where do the quilts come into play?
The quilts is sort of, it's a storyteller. It tells what homes are safe places for the family to literally stop at. So they would literally either put, a wagon wheel or drunker's path, drape it over a banister, a windowsill, over a door. And most people think that this quilt is being aired out. But in essence, they know that this family is about to arrive sometime, either morning, day, or evening. And once the family see that quilt, wherever it's draped, they know that I have a safe place to stop.
Well, hearing that explanation helps me understand your pieces even more, because at the outset you could look at them and think that they're renderings of quilts until you do that closer, deeper looking, and then you see the images that you have embedded within that quilt motif.
Right, and the image that I've embedded in there is the image of the family. So in essence, they're really hiding behind this hidden message. And so that's why I merged the two together. They are literally hiding behind that message. And I think, to me, also, when I think about reading and researching before I come up with the image, it has a lot to do with artists have a lot of power. And to me, I want the visual story to be as accurate as possible.
We have a lot of conversations today about what accuracy means. What does it mean to you?
To me, accuracy means that when you look at this story, and as you begin to think about this story, okay, everyone is going to have a different thought about what accuracy is when they look at it. But as much as possible for me, I want people to see the strength in Black folks. I want them to see the pride in Black folks. I want them to see the creativity of Black people. But when you look at my work, you'll see migrant workers, but they stand strong and tall because, yes, at that time, that was all they could have done. But they had pride in what they were doing, literally making work for themselves, creating work for themselves, working in those fields all day long. But there was pride in all of that. And same thing in this Underground Railroad series. There is pride and there's a lot of strength in what these folks are doing. And so when someone one day began to analyze what I've done, hopefully they could see those kinds of things.
Emotionally, how difficult was it for you to render some of those images?
When you think emotionally, you think about those families. You think about the mud. You think about running through forests and bugs and, everything imaginable. And so I emotionally got into designing the images. Which one would I put this in? And especially when you look at the safe house, right? The log cabin, the little boy falling down. But Dad is saying, come on, son, we have to do this. Mom is there getting ready to pick him up. But to me, that was probably one of the emotional moments. And then flying geese, knowing the brutality of slavery, that was extremely emotional.
We thank you so much for joining us.
Well, I thank you for giving me this opportunity.